Hello and welcome to the latest episode of the 1904 Club, the Hull City podcast, of course, from the Hull Daily Mail. Burns is with me. We're a few hours out from the trip to Luton Town. I'm surrounded by ice and snow. You look nice and cosy in the little recording booth there, Burnsy.
Yeah. I'm in the studio. I've got a show to do after this at Hull's 107.4 or 107 FM. You can get us best on 107.4 on
It's
FM,
right there
and you can
behind
get us
you.
all around the world. It's so it's Burnsy's to-do list, which is a cultural show. So I've got to do that. But I'm looking forward to a bit of a city chat because we've not had one this week, Baz, because I know you've been a busy lad and things like that. So I'm looking forward to a chat, and there's much to talk about, given that the credit to the owner, Acun's come out and backed his manager.
Yeah, and I think it's one of those, isn't it? We spoke on the last pod after the West Brom game about Acun, and you were very vociferous in your desire for him to come out and talk, and it's one of those, isn't it? The interview was met with a lot of frustration and criticism, but it's one of those where it's like everybody wanted to hear from him, but then a lot of people didn't like what they heard. It's that classic, isn't it? I want to hear something, but I don't. I then hear it, but I don't like it. So I think ultimately he has come out and backed his manager, and whether we agree with that or whether we don't, I guess in some respects you have to admire that. Look, we've talked on this show long and hard about Tim's position and what they should do and what they shouldn't do, but part of me does admire Acun in the sense that he's back. He's backing him, and it was Cloughie that always used to say, wasn't it, back in the year dot, where he would always say, well, if an owner appoints a manager and then sacks him, the owner should go as well. Well, it's that, at least he's backing rightly or wrongly, at least he's backing the guy that he's put so much stock in for now, at least.
Yeah. Okay. Well, and I took it. I'm still not convinced that the owner's statement's not going to convince me that he's making the best of what he's got. But I mean, Acun, just to give him some of the quotes to you, just for people sort of watching and listening to the pod, we're not in a position to blame Tim or judge Tim at the moment. I look at the bigger picture. Only in the Norwich game we didn't have a chance to win. The last 4 months, far and away, our unluckiest period. And how can we judge Tim when he has so many big problems in the team? He's talking about injuries there. One of the things I did find really interesting, I believe once we get our players back, the style is correct. And we've had a lot off, me included, on this pod on the 1904 Club about the style. So, but, he's come out and backed his manager. And fair enough, because, we're all guilty of saying, oh, he's got to go and everything like that. But equally, in the past, we've all said, well, he needs a bit more time. So he's given him a bit more time. How long it'll be, I don't know. There was a couple of other things he said in the interview, Bas. I'm sort of paraphrasing your interview here. It was you that did the graft. I'm stealing the glory here, Bas. There has been zero concentration lost from my side about Hull City. Yeah, I'm not sure about that. I think the eye was off the ball in the transfer window. It didn't happen quick enough. But if fair enough. That's my interpretation of that. And selling the club is completely out of my mind. So hopefully that sort of calms down all that. You'll have had the conversation with him. You did have the conversation. What's the greater sense of it? What's the sense you came away, maybe reading between the lines?
My interpretation of it is that he genuinely wants this to work. He genuinely wants Tim to be a success. He's trying to do everything he can to help that, whether it be improvements at the training ground, whether it be players in January, whatever the manager is asking for, the owner is giving it to him, and he's trying his best to give it to him. And I think the difficulty is, isn't it? Look, Acun's made a rod for his own back, and we've talked about this before, that he's made a rod for his own back in the sense that he sacked Liam, and his public statement was very much, I want a greater attacking brand of football. I want this and I want that. And the reality of the piece is we're not seeing it. I think I often think that people in football can try and blind football fans and media, people in the media, by science and by talk of philosophies and idealistic dreams and all that sort of stuff. But I often think the eye test is probably the best one, and we're all capable of going to a football match and making an assessment of what we watch based on the game that plays out. Yeah, okay, 20,000 people don't get to see what they do in training. That's fine, but what they do in training is supposedly, it translates then onto the pitch on a Saturday or a Tuesday night or whatever, whenever they play. And the reality of it, Burnsy, is for the most part this season, in the 15 games we've seen in the league at least, we haven't seen that attacking brand of football consistently. We've seen it in flashes in those 3 wins that we just keep hanging on to those 3 wins because that's all we've got to go on. And with every passing week they get further and further into the rear view mirror. But I think and the quality of the football and the style just has not been what we were told we were going to get. And I was with Tim yesterday. I spent a fair amount of time with him again at the training ground, and we talked about a lot of different things. Not least my clothing again. He was disappointed that I wore a blue jumper this time, not normally I've for some reason I've developed a reputation for wearing bright colours, and he gets really annoyed with me when I don't wear bright colours. So I just wear a blue blazer yesterday. But anyway, I digress. And we were talking about philosophy. Yeah, and he's talking about, he thinks that in the last 7 or 8 games they've improved massively from where they were, and I think there's elements of improvement. But ultimately, no, and that's the key, isn't it? And the style of football is, playing some fancy stuff for 20 minutes doesn't constitute an attacking performance. And when you look at all the stats, and I know that you can turn stats to make any narrative, but however you try and frame the stats, they're not great. They're not having shots on target. Their XG is not great. The crosses in the box, the passes in the final third. I spoke to Ivo Pandor at length, lovely guy. But again, I said to him yesterday, you've got you, Charlie Hughes and Alfie Jones are having more passes between you than the rest of the team put together times about 15. They're passing the ball for fun between the 3 of them. It's like they're playing their own game, and then there's no jeopardy.
Going nowhere.
Yeah, there's so much jeopardy in their own 6-yard box, but 0 jeopardy when they get past the halfway line going the other way. And I think so. The eye test is like what I'm watching is naff, frankly, and results. And it's not like they're getting results with the naffness, are they? The football is generally fairly boring, fairly like it's just not what we were sold. And I think that is Acun is trying to back him. I know I'm waffling now, and it's a long answer for you, but I think my feeling is he really wants it to work, but he also understands that results have got to pick up. And if they don't win at Luton tomorrow, which I don't think they will, and that's not me being negative, I just think Luton will be at it. That they're coming off the back of that 5-1 at Borough. They'll be physical, long balls, all that. We'll talk about that in a bit. But then you've got Sheffield Wednesday at home and Borough away in the next few days. That's if he doesn't start getting results, no matter how much Acun wants it to work and how much we all want him to turn it around and him to get results and start playing fast, free-flowing, attacking football and scoring 4 or 5 goals a week. If that doesn't happen, then I don't think Acun's dreaded vote of confidence actually changes a huge amount, because I still think we're just kicking the can down the road, and that discussion will have to be had at some point.
Yeah, I agree. I don't disagree with that. I just think that he's oversold it. I can remember saying at the start of the season on the 1904 club, he just needs to basically try and dig out some 0-0 draws till he gets to where he wants to be, and we can see what he's been promising. I think they've overpriced, and therefore that raises expectations of what you're going to see. And if he'd said, look, this is, and I know he's sort of said this will take a while, but all the while in the background, it's going to be exciting football. It's not exciting football, but it's so that's raised expectations. They've not met those expectations, and ultimately, they've not won in the last 7 games. So we'll see. Let's hope he turns it round. Let's hope that the owner's faith is repaid, and we'll see what happens.
Question for you then. So, how crucial do you think the international break has been? There's a bit of a kind of a circuit break, if you like, because obviously that they had the 3 wins and then they got pumped at Norwich. Then they were straight into the international break. They've come back, played 6 games, not won a game in those 6 games. In that 6-game period, you've obviously lost Bellumi and Miller to ACL injuries for at least the rest of the season, if not longer. We've had the Portsmouth debacle where the team were booed. He came out and was ill-advised to make the comments he did in the way that he did. Then we had the Oxford game where 1,000 or so away fans hammered him for the second half. They got beat. Then they've got beat again. Do you think that kind of that 2 weeks has given them a bit of a circuit breaker, and just to kind of and obviously Acun coming out and doing the interview that he's done and said, look, everybody, I want everybody just to take a minute. I'm backing him. Let's try and get behind the team for the time being, at least. Is tomorrow Luton is it a fresh start? Is that something? Could the 2 weeks be a good thing for them?
Well, hopefully it'll get some more work into them in the training ground. But I'm sort of the opinion, unless they've discovered another non-contract striker and he's a 20-goal-a-season striker and he's going to come in and do it, they're not scoring enough goals, are they, Baz? So they're not getting out of it. I mean, if they go to Luton tomorrow and pick up a point, I think that's a good result. But if they go to Luton, and Luton have got their own problems, which we'll talk about in a minute, because I'm a bit surprised by it. But if they go and get pummeled at Luton, then he's clinging on by his fingernails, despite the owner's sort of support for him. So let's see. But who knows? We're in that. Who knows? But hopefully, in this international break, has he got more players back? Who is Kamara's back in the squad? Yeah.
Yeah, so Abu Kamara's back fit, and I would be really surprised if he doesn't start. Stephen Alzate and Marvin Malim are both back in training. I was chatting to Stephen Alzate at the training ground on Thursday, and he was saying it was his first session back yesterday on the grass. He thinks that the weekend, he's feeling good, thinks the weekend will come a bit too soon for him. But obviously, we're now into that manic period, aren't we, between now and March, where there's no weekends off. You've got FA Cup as well. So, it's going to be a relentless period. So although he's not available, him and Malam aren't available for Luton, I would suspect that they'd have another day's training today. Those 2 players will probably stay behind, I would imagine, if they're not in the squad, and maybe do some light stuff at the training ground over the weekend. Then they'll have a full day's training on Monday, with the view of being in the squad on Tuesday. So that's good that he's got a couple of midfield options. Casey Palmer, I was chatting to him again yesterday. He's back from international duty with Jamaica. Obviously, they played in St. Louis on, I think it was Tuesday night in the second leg of their Nations League game against the US. They lost that, I think, 5-2 on aggregate. So the US went through. Palmer didn't. I think Palmer played just under an hour in the first leg last week in Kingston, didn't play at all in St. Louis. And then Gustavo Puerta's been away with Colombia, didn't make the squad, although he's in the overall party. He wasn't actually in the matchday squad for their defeats to Uruguay. That Uruguay game sounded mad. I think Colombia equalised in the 95th minute or something like that. And then Colombia went up the other end and scored the winner. So they lost 3-2 to Uruguay. And then they lost to Ecuador. Funny enough, Zambrano probably would have been in that squad had he have not been banned. So, but Puerta wasn't involved, but he's not expected back until today. So if you're listening, it's Friday. So I'd be surprised. And given Walter's previous post-international breaks, from what we've seen, he tends not to start those players that have come back. We saw it with Liam Miller. We've seen it with Palmer. Say again?
Which is sensible, because regardless of whether they play or not, the travelling seems to, for some of them anyway, seems to make the legs a little heavier. Just on possible team selection, Ryan Longman, who did all right last time out, coming on, has he got a chance of starting? Might it be him and Kamara? as the wide players?
Yeah, you think so, wouldn't you? I mean, when you look at the options, obviously, so if you take Puerta out, that would enable you to have to move Abdouche back more centrally, and then you could have Kamara and Longman out on the flanks. Obviously, that would be harsh on Mason Burstow, but Burstow's a striker, isn't he? He's being played out wide. So I'm not sure. No, I would agree with that. I'm not sure how effective that would be away at Luton. I kind of think somebody like away at Luton, you know what you're going to get, don't you? You know that tight ground. You know they're very physical, very direct. Get the ball forward quickly. You're going to need your wingers to get back and get tight. And I think Longman.
You want warriors, Baz. You want warriors. Is looking at that City team. Is it a team of warriors?
I wouldn't say so. There's plenty of effort and great grit and determination, but I'm not sure there's.
I'm not accusing them of lack of effort, but have they got the physical chops to ride out a physical examination?
Well, that's exactly, that's something I've actually written that's going up later today. It's exactly that. It's going to be probably the first time that they've in the 15 game. We've not really seen it in the 15 games so far that they are going to be put under an aerial bombardment, and it is going to be a survival of the fittest. And we'll find out a lot about. I said this to Ivor yesterday, and also I put the question to Tim, and they just said, "Yeah, we're aware of what's coming." I mean, if they get hammered tomorrow and they concede 3 goals from corners or throws, those quotes will be. I'm sure those quotes will be all over social media, going, "Well, we weren't that prepared," but hopefully they are. But yeah, they need to be scrapping. I think somebody like Longman. He's not afraid to get physical. He's not afraid to track back and block crosses and put his foot in. I'm not sure Kamara is that type of player, but Longman certainly. So I'd probably, in that sense, from a defensive point of view, I'd probably be tempted to put him in, and he gives you something going forward. I like Ryan.
I think he's got a lot to prove. At least to me, I'm not convinced.
Well, look, we said
he's
this
going to be a consistent championship player, but he did all right coming on last week and probably deserves a little tickle at it.
Yeah, and look, let's be fair. He did all right in Millwall. 3 goals and 3 assists in 40 odd games don't scream, a huge threat last season. But Millwall are flying this season under Harris. They wanted him back. There's a capable player in there. There's a hardworking, capable player that on his day. We've seen it, we saw it against Everton. We saw it away at Bournemouth. The lad's got quality when he turns it on. Yes. He now needs to do it on a consistent basis and prove that he's got that in his locker rather than just once every 25 games. He's got to start doing it. And he's got, I said to him when I interviewed him a couple of weeks ago, I interviewed him and I said, look, you've been given an incredible chance now because let's be fair, if Miller and Bellumi don't get injured, they're starting every single week, and Longman is out of the team, and he's playing a bit part role, and he's having to wait for an injury, a suspension, or whatever. Now he was probably below Kamara as well, so he's probably 4th choice. Now he's probably 1st choice, or certainly along with Kamara. And he's got a season where he can play now that he wasn't going to have. So it's a massive opportunity for him. He doesn't know what the future is going to hold. He doesn't know if he's going to be here in January at the end of the year. As much as he's settled up here, he loves it up here. He loves playing for Hull City. But with Miller and Bellumi out for the next year or so, he's got a massive chance to go and prove himself. And that's all you can ask. And it's up to the, all he can do is be given the chance, and it's up to him to go and prove it. And we said in the summer, didn't we? With respect to Ryan, before they signed anybody, you've lost Philogene and you've replaced him with either Cynic or Longman, and that wasn't meant with any disrespect, but that was the reality of where City were. They now need him. They need Ryan Longman to turn up and to put in performances and create and score goals, because nobody, they're not. We talk about clean sheets, but they're needing to score, and they're needing to score 2 goals to win a game. Well, they're not scoring 2 goals in a game, are they? They only go. They've only scored more than 1 goal in 3 games, and that was the 3 games they've won. The other 12 games, they've only scored 1 or less, or 0. So they need players to take responsibility and perform and turn up. And Ryan has that in his locker. We need to see it week in, week out, not just once every 25, 30 games.
Hopefully we get it. Just before we turn to Luton, and this, just in case you're wondering, it's a bit of a truncated 1904 club today. Baz and I are doing our best. Prutz and Fletcher otherwise engaged today. Just you mentioned Zambrano there. There was something in the quotes from Acun to you when he was talking about various things. Zambrano, he said, no damage. In January, a new number 6. Does that mean they're not paying him? Who's paying his wages, Baz? There must be some financial damage.
Yeah, I think realistically they've got him, and they're going to be paying him until the end of the season. I think that is the situation. When he says, it's interpretation, isn't it? My interpretation of no damage is that there's no legality problem. City signed him. In terms of City signed him knowing that this was a possible outcome. The alleged offence relates to his time with Quito. So, but I think there's financial damage, of course, because ultimately they've got a player on their books that they're going to be paying, a significant wage for, at least until the end of the season. So, everybody's interpretation of language is different. I think there is damage to the club because they're paying for a player, that they're not going to be. He's played a handful of games, and now he's realistically he's out for at least the end of the end of the season. They're going to be paying a player to sit at home playing on the PlayStation. So there is financial damage there, and they're going to target a number 6. From what he said to me, they're going to look for number 6. Now, if I was Simons, if I was Finn Burns, if I was Regan Slater, I'd be a bit like, well, hang on a minute, that I want to play, but. Look, there's not a lot they can at the minute. I think the club are in a difficult position because they, it's being dealt with by Zambrano's legal team and obviously the club's legal team as well. And there's various people involved, so many people involved in it. So I think the club are in a bit of an awkward position because they can't say anything at the minute because of the legal process. We've put requests in. To talk to people about it, and we've been told that at the minute we can't. But when things become perhaps a little bit clearer, yes. But they are in a tricky position. Acun, I had to be careful how I phrased things from the chat with Acun because obviously it is a legal matter. So and you have to be very careful. You have to tread very carefully. So we just have to wait and see how it plays out. But ultimately, the long and short of it is the club are paying his salary, and so there is a financial drain on the club's budget because they've got a player at least until the end of the season that can't play, and they've got to pay for.
We've got 10 minutes, Baz, before I've got to do a radio show. So should we talk about Luton? I'm going to ask you this. So here they are, just out the Premier League, the 21st. 4th bottom, 15 points, 1 win in 5, 2 wins in 9. Got pumped 5-1 at Middlesbrough last time. Unbeaten in the last 2 at home, which might be significant. And I'm thinking, I think I tipped them in the Hull Daily Mail pre-season supplement to go straight back up. So they've made me look a right mug. What's gone on, Baz? Why are they in this situation? Well, because he's clinging on a bit, isn't he, Rob Edwards?
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of people will be surprised that this game has come round with both managers still in situ. I think after City lost to West Brom, they were pumped 5-1 at Borough. I think the smart money from a lot of people would have been on caretaker managers in charge at the very least for this game. But as it stands, both managers are in charge. I think Rob Edwards did seem pretty forlorn, and has seemed pretty forlorn for a couple of weeks prior to the Borough game of him clinging on. Obviously, he's got credit in the bank. He did a phenomenal job in getting Luton out of the Championship and into the Premier League. They battled hard last year, but although they still went down with one of the worst points totals in Premier League history, they've obviously struggled to adapt. I mean, and when you look at it, they've lost 8 times. They've conceded, I think, 26 goals, which only QPR with 28 is worse. They're not scoring a huge amount, and it's not dissimilar to City, is it? They concede more than they score, and if you do that, you ain't going to win many football matches. So, look, they've got obvious quality, and they've got It's hard to imagine that they won't at some point fix it and start getting results. But that may not happen. It may be one of those seasons where they really struggle. They change the manager at some point. He's got credit in the bank, of course. But for me, this is probably City's most difficult game of the season when you factor in where they're going to. Luton are always good at home, even now. That you know, I know I think they've won 3, lost 3, and drawn 2 at home. So they're not, you know, they're not terrible at home. They are away, terrible away, but at home they are better.
Scored 12, conceded 12, so they're you know, bang average at best, aren't they? Really?
Yeah, but I still think this is, in the context of the season, this is City's most difficult game because they're 2 places below City on the same goal difference. If they were to win, City drop further down the table, Luton go 3 points ahead of them, and they're looking, you know, perhaps that is the momentum shift for them. And I said to Tim yesterday, like, you know, a game like this away at Luton, away at a team that were in the Premier League last year, although largely with a Championship squad, if they could if City could win that game, particularly with the 2 games to come, that could be the spark for them, and it could be the result that they need to kickstart their season. So, you know, whoever loses tomorrow, if there is going to be a loser, you worry for them going forward. But I just think for City, it's such a difficult game given the way that Luton play. We talked about it earlier, the physical nature of it. It's going to be direct. They're going to be under the pump. As you said, it needs warriors. But they've struggled to adapt to life back in the Premier League. It can happen. You know, I'm fascinated to see if they can turn it around. You would think that at some point that they will, because they've got some good players. But that doesn't guarantee anything, does it? And the Championship is a cruel mistress at the best of times. So it may well be that they're down in and around that bottom 4 or 5 all season and just scrape to stay up, and maybe Edwards clings on. But yeah, as I say, for City, it's a huge game of significant importance. And if they can get a result and answer a lot of questions, it sets them up for the Yorkshire Derby against the biggest club in the world on Tuesday night. Nicely, doesn't it?
Yeah, I just see it as an opportunity. Given what the owner said, he's backed the manager. It's an opportunity. I know what you're saying about the way they play and everything like that, but
it is an opportunity.
They're struggling. They're struggling for form. They'll be struggling for confidence, a bit like City. So you've got to look at it and you know, say it's an opportunity. You've had another couple of weeks to work on the players, or a week or whatever. I don't know whether they must have got some time off. So let's see what you're about. Let's see if the master plan is finally going to come together. I'm not sure it is.
At some point,
I still can't get my head around the way he plays his football, but you know, that's me.
It makes no sense. But at some point, you know, he has to get results, doesn't he? And that, you know, Luton is as I said before, I think it's a really difficult game. I think Luton I think they'll start quickly because they'll have had, you know, that 2 weeks to wallow on the back of that pumping at Borough and all the noise around it. But it's a huge opportunity for City to go there, and you know, they're not, as you said, they're in terrible form. Confidence is going to be difficult. If City could find a way to get that early, get a goal in front, then it'd be interesting to see how the crowd reacts to that, and how the team reacts to that. But it is an absolutely very winnable game if you were a team that were winning games and you were playing well and you were in confidence.
Yeah.
You know, City. Everything we say about Luton is applicable to City. You know, we can talk about, there are positives. There there have been positives in the last few weeks, but they're still not winning games. So they're no better off than Luton. Really, they're on the same points. So Luton have lost more games, but a couple more games. But both teams are they're locked together on the same points. They've got 15 points after 15 games. So they're not. Neither of them are confident. It is. You know, 2 struggling teams, 2 teams that are down the bottom for a reason, because the table probably at this stage of the season doesn't lie when you get to this after 15 games. So, you know, I would probably take a point now if you offered it me, just to away from home there. But I do think they can go and win the game. but they have to be so much better than what they've been in previous weeks, and they have to keep a clean sheet. I think if they're gonna win tomorrow, they have to keep a clean sheet, and they've done that once in 15 games. They're bottom of the league when it comes to clean sheets. I know the manager's not too fussed about them. The players seem to be, but you've got to draw a line in the sand, and you've got to go at some point. You've got to keep a shutout and give yourself half a chance of winning the game, and then one goal might be enough.
Well, we shall see what happens. We shall, as always, we'll see what happens. When are we picking the bones out of it? Hopefully, with a bigger crew. No offence, Baz, but it's nice to get some different voices other than the pair of us. When we're picking the bones out of it on the next 1904 Club.
So all being well, we will be back on Monday to review the game and then look ahead to Sheffield Wednesday. Just to point you in the right direction as well. If you've not heard it yet, I was down at the academy during the break, and we spoke to a few players, David Myler, Connor Sellers as well. So listen out for that. And there's also a podcast coming probably Monday or maybe Tuesday before the game with Aaron, who's the head groundsman at the MKM Stadium. We've had a fascinating chat about the pitch issues of last year, of how the pitch, how they deal with injuries and all that sort of stuff. And I tried to get him on which does more damage to the pitch, rugby or football. So listen out for that, probably, as I say, Monday or Tuesday. But we'll be back with the main episode of the 1904 Club with myself, Fletch, Burnsy and Prutz on Monday to look back on what we hope will be an away win for Hull City. Burnsy, thank you so much for your time this morning.
It's no problem. Enjoyed chatting as always.
And thanks to everybody else for watching and for listening. Do get in touch at the 1904 Club on X, and we will be back again soon.